Ha 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 ha.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I may have to log back in. I am doubled up here. I had to. Well, actually, hang on.
Twinsies.
Let me
Oh,
check
wait.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
let me log back in.
So what you back? What you got? Two of your twinsies, man.
There you go.
Wow.
So let me close out. I'll be back.
Does that mean I'm gonna be by myself here?
Oh, there we go. Let's see. How's that? No. Let's see.
Welcome to look. Hello, everybody. There you go. Now you just
Okay. All right. I had it.
Hello, everybody.
No. I had to. We were out of space, so I had to go and like free up some space. But I thought I logged it somehow. Logged me out, logged me back in, or something. I don't know. Anyway,
Right. Okay.
What's going on, everybody? What's wrong, Brian? You didn't want two of me? Is that what you didn't want, man? It's too many?
Too many.
Huh? Too many? How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to Local Musicians
XP.
We are here for your audio and visual pleasure on this Tuesday night.
Yes.
We got a great show for you. We have a fantastic guest that we are going to bring in a few minutes.
Yes.
And but in the meantime, we are going to warm you up a little bit with telling you a little bit about what's going on with us. So if you are new to the show, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and what else?
Twitter, YouTube.
Yeah, everything. X,
Twitch,
Instagram. You can follow us there.
Hit the like button on YouTube and subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and you can catch more of our fabulous content. For those of you who don't know who we are, I'm Chris Burroughs. I live in Atlanta. I am am I a professional drummer? I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm a professional
drummer for money.
Drummer.
You're what you want me to.
And
do.
This is my trusty co-host, musical partner, soon to be DR'd in front of his name. He's working on his doctorate. The great Tyrone Jackson, keyboard player. What else, man?
All around
New Orleans. Guy. New Orleans cuisine enthusiast.
Yes.
We could go on and on. But we are here in Atlanta, Georgia, and if this is your first time checking us out, we want to welcome you to the show, man.
Yeah.
It's always good to get some new people, which I think we will have some new faces in here tonight. Some organ heads, as we could call them, man. There's a deep history with the Hammond B3 organ, man.
Yeah.
And we're about to talk all about it, and we got the guy to definitely chop that up with. So
right. Did you know that the Leslie wasn't the original part of the Hammond organ, and the guy who created the Hammond hated the Leslie?
Really?
Hated it. Yes.
Hated it. Why did he hate it? Why did he hate it?
Because he was trying to emulate the pipe organ. He was trying to make it like a portable pipe organ. So, but the Leslie, that motion thing, I think it's like one of the defining things for the instrument, But he hated it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, man, that's that's the sound, really. That
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting, man, because you remember I was driving the other day on my way to the Lake Oconee area, and I told you I passed by this pipe. That pipe was like pipe organ, some pipe organs factory. I was like, whoa,
Right.
I need to go check that out, man.
I don't know if Falgua has ever heard of this, but there's like they have these they call them full gospel Catholic churches. So it's like a Baptist
Okay.
church, but the Catholic church, right? And
Okay.
those cats play pipe organ like almost like they would play B3. It's kind of weird, like they play the gospel songs on pipe organ.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of
Wow.
crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
So all right, well let's get some housekeeping on and then we're gonna bring our guest in. He's patiently waiting and he has to get to bed early, y'all. He has a long drive into Atlanta area tomorrow. So coming from New York City.
It's the big one right here.
Yeah. So well, they're all big, but this is the first big one, I would say, and
Yeah.
the one that we've been. I already know, man. What y'all gonna pull? So I don't know. If somebody gonna bring another keyboard. There'll be another organ. Something's gonna happen. Anyway, listen, we got two, not just one, but two organ players for your buck on Thursday night at Napoleon's. We got my man Tyrone Jackson. Do you guys know who's playing? Well, okay, we'll figure that out in just a second. Is going to play one set of organ, and our guest tonight, the great Pat Bianchi, is going to be playing a set. So we got two sets of Hammond B3 organ, backed by myself and our brother Ben Weatherford on guitar.
Yes.
So it will be the same trio or the same group that's going to be backing up both of these cats, and it's going to be a really, really, really great. It's different styles, and that's what we want. We want difference. We don't want the same. We want difference. So we got Tyrone doing his thing, Pat doing his thing. Now, who's going first? Or we got to figure. Or let's wait. We got to figure that out.
No. I'm going
Wait,
first.
we don't. Wait a minute. We're gonna have that discussion in a minute.
I need to make a correction for you. First of all, you said different styles. Yes. If I could play Pat's style, I'd be playing his style, bro. Like that. If I could play his, it'd be two same styles, bro.
Man, come on, man.
But I could only be me right now. But I'm a fan, so I wanna play first, so I can sit in the audience, elbow people. I dare somebody to talk to me while this set is going on. I will flip them around like the Leslie. Come on, bro.
Man, I have never seen. This is like, it's pretty incredible, man, to see you this inspired by something that it's been nudging you for a long time. You even went out and got you got the real deal at the house, man.
That's the deal, bro. That's the thing. It's like, and even after the concert, bro, I was like, okay, it's time to put the money in, get this, get it, whatever. So,
right.
But yeah, it was very inspiring. So all I can say is, everybody should come to this show.
Well,
just get a little taste. That's all I can say. And we used to have a vibrant, like John Robinson talked about, there was like a jam session that was just organ. Like you'd have to play organ. You couldn't come with it. They said they remember one guy came in with a keyboard and like, what you doing? It's like, I want to play keys. It's like, nah, straight organ, homie. We played organ the whole time. So I mean, I think if people come out to this, they could be inspired that we could do an organ night, where it would be cool. We got a couple of organists and that's playing, but it could be very inspiring and be great for the scene,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to me, it's the sound that anybody can get into because there's just something about the warmth of the sound of the organ and the way it hits you, the way it hits your soul.
It's the power when it hits you too, but there's so much power in it. But there's so many levels, right? And especially I'm learning that it's like its own orchestral instrument. Like you have layers, like an orchestra would do, you know. So
Right.
that people, and then you add the sound of the blues. I don't know what it is. I don't try
Hmm.
to analyze it, but the blues is still relevant today. When you play a blues song, people feel it. And I think that's an aspect that's missing in a lot of people's playing. And don't get me wrong, and don't get it twisted, it's not the blues scale. See, a lot of people think, oh, I'll play the blues scale. Well, you know, I can play many different blues scales over a different chord, you know, but people think about that one blues scale that they hear and they play and say, oh, I'm playing the blues. No, 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 no. The blues is a way of playing, it's a feeling, it's emotive. It's and I think that's what's lacking in, you know, our playing is the absence of the blues, you know.
Well, that sounds like a show topic to me. So, Brian, can you write that one down? What happened to the blues?
Yeah.
And we will discuss that at a later date. But you're right, man. You're 100%.
Blues got supplanted by the greens, bruh.
All
The
right.
money.
So yeah, come on out. It's a ticketed event. You can go online to Napoleon's and you can buy tickets, or you can show up at the door and
Right. I
yeah, come
suggest you
on,
get a ticket,
come on in.
reserve your table.
Yeah.
Do that.
So that's Thursday, and then the night after that, Ben and I will be trekking it up to Nashville to play at
Mhm.
Rudy's Jazz Room as part of Pat's trio. We'll be there Friday and Saturday, and that's 8 o'clock and 10:15 or 10 o'clock shows, I think. So if you're in the Nashville area, I know I got some people coming out, some cats that are that I know that are up there. They're coming, and that place I'm sure will be packed out. So really looking forward to that, man, and getting into these conversations with Mr. Bianchi, man, and Mr. Weatherford. So, and then August 18th, we got to kind of put some steam on this, even though we
Yeah.
got probably 6 or 7 people already kind of lined up for this. So this will be the second LMXP jam session featuring the next generation of jazz. These are hand-picked students that have
Invited.
been personally invited. It is a private session, but it is open to the public to watch. So I highly recommend if you're really into knowing a little bit deeper how we communicate, what how we even maybe for lack of a better word teach. I don't know how much teaching is going to be going on, but we definitely going to be telling it like it is. So, but we had a lot of success with this a couple of months ago, and we're going to bring it back. Hopefully, what every few months or something like that. We'll probably do
Yeah.
it to get started, and maybe it'll turn into like a once a month thing. But so it's select students that are going to be assigned music. They're assigned tune. They don't get to pick anything. They have to learn something, and then they have to come in and they have to play with us. So if y'all remember pros versus Joes, it's a little bit of that kind of vibe where the Joes have to play with the pros and then get critiqued on what they need to work on, and it's just like it's like my boy Deshaun, who was I was trying to get some boxing training from him. It's like he said, I'm not going to kill you, but I am going to challenge you. And when I heard that, I said, "Hey, man, I'm going to Europe for about 3 years, and I won't be back for any of
Don't
that."
let him
But
catch you in the streets. Then he's gonna be on, bro. If he
man,
catch you,
dude, I can't. Now he's sending me. I know he got me, man.
yeah.
Now I can't get out of it. So,
Does he know your
but
address?
anyway,
He knows where you live.
he can find it.
I'm about to send it to him, bro. I'm gonna accelerate things for you, bro. Hey, man,
I
what's
heard
the?
it.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. What you say?
No, I was gonna say you told me a little bit about you when you was trying to do some boxing training, man.
Bro,
Oh
let me
my
tell you.
gosh. I
That
just want to hit the
3 minutes
speed
of
bag,
throwing
man. That's
punches.
all I want. Huh?
That 3 minutes of punching, bro. You think, and then you got 1 minute rest in between. You're like, what the heck is going on? Bruh, what's the name of the show? I'm drawing a blank. It's on like HBO. Oh, Hard Knocks. That's what it is.
Hard knocks. Hard
I think
knocks.
this, if we, for an audience perspective, it's
Mm-hmm.
like watching Hard Knocks where you get to see
Mm-hmm.
what goes on behind the scenes, you know, a little
Yeah.
bit.
I
They're
like
not
that.
going to show you everything, because at the end of the day, you know, that's what they can't give you all their plays and stuff. But
Exactly.
the same thing, it kind of applies. You get a bird's eye view
Yeah.
of what goes on when we have
The
to
inner workings. The inner
Yeah.
workings. Yeah.
So, and for an audience member, I think that would be a great thing. You get to be in a fishbowl, in a fish tank
Right.
with the cats, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's August 18th. That's a Sunday. And so mark your calendars for that. If you have a student that you feel like is playing on a high level and you would like for him to be involved, you can contact us. You can drop us
or
her. You can drop us a DM on Messenger or Instagram, however you want to email us, however you want to get a hold of us. We do have local musicians XP at Gmail. So if you want to send us an email, you can get a hold of us that way. So really looking forward to that. And other than that, we don't need to talk about last night. I'm gonna let you
please, bro.
Well, this is gonna be an exorcism of sorts, man. You know, we got a little bit today, but yeah, it was a rough gig last night. So, you know, it happens. But maybe for another show we'll do a deep dive into 2024.
My fellow piano player, Misha. You are the man, Misha. I appreciate you, bro. So much more than you know.
Yes, thank you, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, man. So without further ado, see, I already know, man. I got my points up here though. I'm getting some conversation in, bro. I'm getting some conversation. I got some I already got my stuff lined up. So you can try to hog it all you want, because I already know what's coming, dude.
I'm a listen, bro.
Right. You are. Yeah, I can see you looking down. You already got your questions and everything, man.
I do.
I already know what's up. All right, man. So without further ado, we're gonna bring in one of the current greats of the Hammond B3 organ. He's found a way to. I tell you, man, this cat is have car, will travel, man. And just as he's inspired you to dive deep into the instrument, he has inspired me to think about, man, I need to be doing some of this getting around and hiring cats and getting my, you know what I mean? It's like, why not? You know?
Yeah.
So this cat, I don't know how many miles he puts on his car a year. I want to know, you know what I'm saying? But it's a lot. And we met how many months ago, man? In April. Ben Weatherford and yourself brought him down to do a masterclass at Kennesaw State.
He also did a performance at Jackson State with Anthony Violet right out there.
Yeah, with Andy, right, exactly. And then we did a concert as well.
Mimosa Hall and Roswell.
Yeah, and but man, it was a pleasure to you know, I could just play with organ. I mean, I don't need to play with nothing else, man. That's really how I feel. I mean, it just sometimes something is just kind of made for you. That's kind of how I feel about the organ. This cat definitely solidified it. And I'm looking forward to the next few nights chopping it up and playing with him. And without further ado, we're going to bring in my dude, the great Pat Bianchi.
Yes, sir.
What's happening? Trying to figure this out.
Hey, do you hear all the screams and cheers, Pat?
I heard the applaud.
Yeah.
A golf
clap, man. Slow clap.
The reverb on it's incredible.
What's going on, my man? How you doing?
Much, man. Hanging in there, trying to keep it all going, like you both you guys know, but no complaints. How about you? How about both of you? Everything good?
Man, Tyrone's been better, but
Uh-oh. Yeah, I caught a little bit of what happened last night.
We'll talk about it
Yeah.
over
Okay.
a beer or something on
Mama
Thursday.
said there'll be nights like this.
Ah, yeah, it's a little
Hey,
bit of
Yep.
hey, it's all good.
Yeah, there was the good and the bad, right?
Good and the bad. Yep.
exactly,
So,
exactly.
Chris, you
So,
gonna start, bro? Because you know.
well, man, let's I'm gonna let you get first crack. We will well, I mean, we've got plenty of stuff that we want to talk to him about. Uh and I guess we could, yeah, let's just start, man, from the just tell us a little bit about your beginnings. That's always a fascinating thing, is how do cats fall into the organ? I know we talked a little bit about this, but let people know, like, were you playing piano before that? Were you playing in church? How did all this happen, man?
It feels sometimes like I'm grateful that it happened. Sometimes it feels like a curse that happened. But but no, for me, was very fortunate to come up in a musical family. My father played drums. My grandfather, both grandfathers, had were weekend musicians. They played in a lot of dance bands, which playing not jazz, more like big band music in small group format.
Right.
So I was exposed to some of that stuff at a very young age, and I kind of showed an interest, the keyboard aspect of things. And I had a toy keyboard that I would kind of sit. My father would record a lot of it at the gigs, and I would sit there and pretend to play along with some of those recordings. And since they saw I was interested in actually kind of figuring a few things out by ear, for my, I think it was seventh, I was either 7 or 8 for Christmas gifts. One grandfather gave me what's called a Farfisa organ, which is a combo organ or a transistor organ built in the 60s. It was kind of made as a competition to Hammond, although there's no competition whatsoever. So I had that. And the other grandfather, in conjunction, gave me a small amplifier to go with it. So I started playing organ and learning left hand bass, and sitting in the basement learning these tunes. And eventually there'd be like quote unquote family jam sessions where my father would bring the drums in if he had like a Saturday off or something, and my grandfather would play alto, just run tunes, and I would be pretty young doing this. And after that, I eventually got into playing piano, classical piano. My parents wanted me to, have a more formal training, and I didn't take to it as well. I never did. I just didn't have the discipline at that time, or the interest. I mean, I could sit with a recording of my father's band for hours, figure out C jam blues and what to do over, but sit down and try to figure out Bach wasn't going to happen really. And I wish I had spent more time in my classical studies back then, but what it is what it is. But then by the time I was like 13, I was actually subbing in these bands that my father and my grandfathers were playing in. So I was doing I guess Elks clubs, all these different kind of things. Not the hippest gigs, but out there playing. Back when gigs were 9 to 1 still, or 10 to 2, and in a tuxedo playing. I had a Yamaha keyboard with the tenor player. My father was playing these different gigs, and as I got into high school, I had a high school band director that was a really great jazz pianist, and that kind of started pointing me in that direction more. And so I dove deeper into that. I started learning how to play left hand voicings and doing that kind of thing. But when I was 16 or 17, something like that, my grandfather or my grandmother actually got me a CD Joey Francesco live at the 5 spot. And I had never heard Joey before. I had never heard any of the other organ players before. And that just kind of knocked me out. And that just started sending me down that road. And so somebody was throwing out a Hammond M3, which is a spinet organ. It has shorter keyboards and bass pedals, and that's how I started learning to play Hammond, so to speak. But ended up at Berkeley studying jazz piano, and eventually went back to Oregon from there.
Well,
Wow.
that's kind of weird because most people don't start off on organ right away, and it's a different animal from piano.
Yeah.
And can you kind of explain the difference? Because people think that if you play piano, you can play organ and vice versa, and it's a totally different thing, right?
Yeah, it's completely different in terms of, I mean, well, the most obvious thing being, left hand, for the sake of conversation, your left hand's playing bass lines. So you're kind of splitting your brain playing chords or their solos in your right hand, playing bass lines in the left hand and keeping them both going at the same time. The other thing that's different is organ doesn't have touch sensitivity like a piano. You can't, the harder you hit it, it's still the same volume, so you have to learn how to compensate using the volume pedal, the expression pedal. And the further you get into it, there are things you can do with the touch. And that, to me, is the dead giveaway of a pianist playing an organ versus an organist, because there's subtle things in the touch and either the way you manipulate their articulation, the grace notes. There's a thing called percussion on the organ that triggers a tone, and that's monophonic. So when you play, it dies out. But if you lift off the keys, it comes back. So the way you can manipulate that is something that's very unique to the organ. Then the bass lines, not even the note choices, but it's just the feel. You're trying to emulate a bass player, so getting some of those triplet figures in there, some of the anticipations, walking lines that a bass player might walk. For example, I always talk to my students about, when you're walking a bass line, think about starting on the third instead of the root. It's going to give you a different sound, put you in a different place. A pianist might not necessarily think about it in that way. So a lot of those things are a big difference. And then, for example, the sound. Obviously, the organ's a very fat sound. So the voicings that you would play in your right hand, they're not as dense as you would play on a piano, because a piano has so much more clarity to it. You can really stack seconds and thirds, and build up some really beautiful, like the Herbie voicings, or like Kenny Kirkland as an example, and some of those polychords and things that are just incredible sounding. But you try to do those same shapes on the organ, it just sounds like mud. So it's learning really a new set of voicings that you can get the point across in 3, 4, sometimes 5 notes, but not as often, instead of 7, 8, things like that. So those a lot of things along those lines. When you really dive in, you start finding a difference.
Beautiful.
Another, I mean, to kind of piggyback on that and talk about the other side of the organ playing.
Your mic stopped working, Chris. There was like a pop out there. Yeah, it was short.
Sorry about that. Yeah, to piggyback on what you guys were just talking about there, and to talk about the percussion aspect of the organ and how important that is, and the rhythmic. It's very similar to what we do as drum set players. You've got the feet, you've got your right hand, your left hand, the independence that is
required.
is tied into that. How influential are drummers to you in terms of kind of how you approach certain things?
They have been very much so in the past. We had talked about this prior, or in the past, but I had worked with Ralph Peterson for a number of years, which to me, was one of the greatest of this generation, the past 20, 25, 30 years.
No doubt.
And his independence is ridiculous. It was ridiculous. I mean, the things he could do was just scary. And always precise. And then other drummers, Byron Landon, I got to play a couple times with Jeff Watts, and the way they know exactly where everything is, but can be so fluid and free at the same time, really started to make it. It still does, because I'm still figuring out ways to do it, thinking about stretching that independence even further, because as a pianist, we have, when you're playing piano, you have somewhat of a luxury of being able to kind of lay back on the bass player and the drummer at different points, because they're the foundation at that point. And if you want to push and pull, that they're not going to move, and it's going to be, you can kind of weave in and out, you change your feel or whatever. But as an organist, trying to do that was, and it's like a whole other level of stuff, because it's like you're trying your best to keep your left hand solid, and your foot solid. And the last thing you want, at least for my taste, when I hear an organ player, is everything to be on the grid. And what I mean by the grid is the left hand and the right hand line up exactly, where everything is some kind of subdivision of the bass, literal. and versus like a record that was a huge influence to me, that I transcribed actually a bunch of, was Sonny Rollins Live at the Vanguard, and hearing the tenor, Sonny Rollins as one voice and the bass as a separate voice, and trying to figure out, which I'm still trying to do, keeping that right hand free while that left hand is with the rhythm section. And it's not as easy, it's said and done. I mean, and it's not necessarily equating to playing fast. It's just all about, okay, how do I practice, or how do I figure out keeping that left hand solid, but then playing behind in my right hand without my left hand wanting to go, or keeping that and then wanting my right hand ahead, and being able to have that same kind of freedom, which is been an endless study. And every time I work on some new things related to it, I start feeling I get someplace, and then it's like I got to do something else, get to that point, to try to find another point. So it's kind of a constant search, I guess you could say, for me, and how to do that. And it comes from working with those kind of drummers, and for example, Ralph Peterson. One thing he hit me to, working on Ted Reed more,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
left hand, left foot, playing quarter notes, really be able to nail those eighth notes in the right hand, and looking at them as etudes, and then playing with them back in different ways that way. So ultimately, I think those drummers especially, have been huge to me in that way, for sure.
And when you talk about that, especially the interaction between drums, and now that you have control of the bass and the harmonic sketch and even the melody, those kind of things, it's kind of easier to work with those two. But then most people are confused when you say organ trio and you include the guitar. So and I think uh it has something to do with the sound of the guitar, the pickups and stuff like that. It's a really nice marriage between the two sounds. But I'm going to ask you, historically, why has it been guitar and not another instrument?
I think because of the aspect. I think because of the fact that the guitar can serve dual function. I mean, guitar could
Right,
be the pianist's left hand and play
right,
chords, and then also be a solo voice.
right,
Like from a sonic standpoint, as you mentioned, they go together really well.
right,
Too, and it does provide on the level of support.
right,
In terms of rhythmic and harmonic support. Some
right,
um, some people use that, or took advantage of that more than others. So there's a couple of factors like that. But it kind of broke out of that mold. I think between organist Don Patterson, when he would record a bunch of Sonny Stitt, and when it
mhm,
was just trio with Billy James and Sonny Stitt, and no harmonic instrument when Don was soloing, but also Larry Young. I mean, the famous record Unity. You
right,
know, it almost wasn't needed. And they Elvin. I mean, the comping that he does is just
right.
incredible, anyways. But so it has branched out since then. But it's just, I think, all the different aesthetic values. Guitar is really it's a perfect fit. Now there have been some recordings, like a recording of Gene Harris and Jack McDuff, that it works
Right,
really well too.
right,
Um, and I think, I've done a couple things with organ and piano and organ and vibes, and it always just comes down to listening, because if you're both comping at the same time
right,
and not listening, then it can get real muddy real quick, or, too much going on at once.
right.
That's kind of the conflict between, Tyrone could probably speak on this as well, is the conflict between piano player and guitar that
Yeah,
happens a lot, is the who's comping, who's laying those, I kind of see that firsthand quite a bit, and it usually falls on the guitar player not really knowing how to play with the organ, or how to play with the piano,
Mm.
and how to, when to lay out, when it's just, and it's all about, I guess it's about choices. You guys can talk on that more, but I'm just, from listening and being in the drum chair, when I observe that, it's always very interesting, because I'm like, I could tell, I was like, man, this cat doesn't know how to play with a piano player, you
yeah. Well,
know.
you never know what's in another person's head. I mean, you can kind of be logical what's going on, but especially when you have dominant seven chords or things that point to things, we all have our things or sounds that we hear. So, if I want to use the flat 9 to resolve a certain way. Somebody use a sharp 9. We play that at the same time and play a different rhythm. It's chaotic, right? And so sometimes I'll choose to play third and sevenths and let the guitar player build from there, or they play a rhythm and I'll play a 2-octave thing, especially like in Brazilian music, whatever. But we both have to, it's like what Pat said, you have to be willing to listen and kind of figure out what role you're going to take on, you know. And if a person is not doing that, then you're like, bro, just let me have it, you know, or you take it. And sometimes
which
the
is
worst
what
thing is,
which is what I see a lot. You know,
right,
it's, man, you got it. You know, and
right.
the other guy just doesn't play at all. It's just like,
I
no,
hate that the most.
yeah.
When I let you have it and you stop comping, I was like, but you were comping great with me when I was comping, you know. Come on. So, you know, yeah.
Well,
But
it's an
just
interesting
listening.
thing too because space is also a good thing, you
Right.
know,
Yes.
and it's like everyone when I do quartet gigs with a guitarist, and especially these days with a guitarist and like say a horn player. I mean, there'll be plenty of times I'll just take my right hand off the instrument, not for any other reason than just it's a different sonic
Yeah.
thing, and kind of let it, you know, let it grow into something, you know, and it's
Right.
you know, instead of being the two comping all the time, it's just like maybe it's because I'm playing bass, but I have less and less of a problem with just, you know, if there's somebody else that's comping and doing something, especially if they're getting into a vibe, I'll just stay out of the way,
Right.
you know,
Right.
unless they're until there feels like that point where okay, it makes sense to jump in. At least I try to do that. So doesn't always work out, of course,
Right.
but
Yeah, I mean that's wow. That's cool. I want you guys need to do a little symposium, man, at some point on piano and organ playing and
Yeah, we kind of
how
talked about
to
this the last time of
yeah,
doing something together, which would be hip. So
yeah, absolutely.
we'll plan that, especially at Kennesaw, and do piano, organ, bass, drums, all
Right,
that kind of. I mean, not bass,
right,
but you know, drums.
right, right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we
Well,
had a question. I'm on Instagram and so we're gonna kind of start talking about some of your you made a very interesting comment to me about the guy that I'm about to bring up. And the question is from Willow Beast 77, Willow Beast 77. And his question is, was Joey D an influence on you in any way? So of course I
of
know the answer
course.
to this, but let's so let's jump into because you made a really interesting comment to me. We were talking about Joey D, and you said he was a mentor and a tormentor at times.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
so let's just we got a little thing called studying with the masters, and let's just go ahead and jump into your relationship and your history with Joey D.
Yeah, so the way the story goes, it's you know a whole bunch of people have heard it over the years, and certain groups became kind of infamous. Which was I was in college and I was 20 at the time. It was it was the spring semester of my third year, and at that time, back in I believe 1997, there was no Facebook, obviously MySpace, anything like that, but there were internet mailing groups, forums, if you will,
Right.
and the one I had joined and belonged to was called the Hammond Organ Forum. And it was dedicated to repairing the instrument, the technical aspects, but as well as the playing aspects. Um, and so there's a discussion had started amongst some people. I wasn't involved. I was just reading it, talking about Jack McDuff and about how his bass playing it was very unique in the way he approached his playing bass lines and tapping the pedals. And as I had mentioned earlier in our conversation, I had started off, even though I had played left hand bass at the very beginning. When I got to the Hammond, I was playing bass pedals because the organ I had didn't go all the way down. So I was doing that quite a bit. There was an organist in Buffalo, New York, by the name of Bobby Jones, who was a jazz player who played that way, and I was just blown away by that too. So I was doing all pedal bass, where I was comping with my left hand, soloing with the right, whatnot. But as this email thread gets going, They're talking about this and that and tapping the pedal when you play left hand lines here and there. And I jumped in and I said, that's really not the way you play the organ. A left hand bass is kind of cheating. You got to play the bass pedals, comp, solo. And the discussion keeps going. And as I kept just disagreeing with everybody, and finally somebody gets on and they're, well, man, you really need to check out this record. And you need to check out that record, because this is the way it's really done. And I said, I disagree, so emails kept going. And by the, this conversation between myself and this other individual, um, kept getting more and more heated. And this individual would only sign the emails, the authority. And finally, after, this, like I said, went on for like a week, week and a half. And finally, a very, very dear friend of mine, who was another organ player in Buffalo and tech and everything, calls me up and he's like, what are you doing right now? He's like, I'm just sitting here in my dorm room. He's like, are you sitting down? I'm like, yeah, I'm just made some coffee, sitting down. He goes, well, you realize who you've been arguing with all week, don't you? And I go, no, I don't know who, but if they can't even sign their name, come on, why should I care? I mean, they could at least say who they are. And he goes, well, you've been arguing with Joey DiFrancesco all week. So I immediately, I must have turned like pale or bright red or something, whatever. And so I immediately got on and I emailed him and I said, I apologize. I had no idea it was you. You were a huge, inspiration. I have the record life, the 5 spot. It was just blah, blah, blah. And 10 minutes later, I get a response, with the phone number. So I sort of paced back and forth in my room for a little bit, in my dorm room. And it's like, I finally just get it up and courage to call. And I call it. The first thing he said is, how's that left foot treating you these days? So that was my introduction. And then I was very fortunate to know him through the years. I learned a lot playing from him, obviously. I played with the trio for about a year, around 2008. So from a musical standpoint, he was a huge influence. I mean, that's, to try to play those lines, those tempos, those kind of changes, it's like that was the inspiration for it. So yeah, to answer the question, yeah, it was a huge influence.
Man, was he also in your wedding ceremony too or something?
Yep, that's the man.
Nice.
Yep, and I have to say he was tour mentor too, because especially when we played together, um, there was no holding back, and it's just like, so I was like, okay, let's get my ass kicked again tonight, get my ass kicked again tomorrow night, but that's the best way to learn, and like, so many of the greats I got to, older cats I got to play with through the years. I'm thankful for those experiences on the bandstand, because nothing can replace those. I mean, perfect example talking about comping. And when I graduated college, I went to Denver. I lived in Denver, Colorado, and there was a club out there, El Chapultepec, which was a jazz club. It was a tiny place, but they had jazz 7 nights a week, and I was a house piano player, and they would bring in special guests. And the one week, the first gig was Red Holloway. So I was just beside myself at 21. I was just sitting up there with Red Holloway, and Red was just killing it the whole week. I mean, it was just incredible. But later on, in talking about comping, one of the guests was vocalist Dakota Staten. And, whose big hit was the Late Late Show. And she made it very clear, we're playing a ballad and everything, and playing behind her, and she just looked at me. We were playing, and she just yelled at me. She said, "Stroll." So those kind of experiences to me are worth their weight in gold, and I'm thankful for them.
Can you? I mean, it seems like we're just the things that you're saying. These are things that Tyrone and I talk about all the time. Other cats that we talk about this all the time, and we feel like it's a little bit of a lost art. It's people are so their first, it's like their goal is to just get on stage and get the applause and get all of that the love, so they can post something on social. I think social media has really it's flipped everything in the opposite direction of kind of where it should be. We do our best to kind of reconfigure things kind of, the way that they should be, but it's almost impossible to do that. So when you have younger students, what things are you trying to talk to, beside obviously the technical stuff that you're in the lesson with, but in terms of just what are you trying to talk to them about in terms of, man, you have to go up there and get your butt whipped. I mean, that is so important. It's part of the process. You can't skip that. How do you break that down to your students?
Well, I think first of all, I have to make a distinction of which student I think is able to hear something like that, because
Interesting.
not every
Interesting.
student.
Wow.
I mean, especially in a music school, it's kind of a really kind of a backwards thing to have to think about, because if you think if you're going to a music school and dedicating your time to study music, whatever style, whatever instrument, whatever specialty within music, that it's all about getting pulling it together. But not every student, I think, is able to hear that. That you got to go up there and you're going to have to get your butt handed to you. Not everyone. I just different times, different culture we live in. And
Mhm.
also I think the lack, the not the lack of, but the less amount of older mentors in that respect, is doesn't help the situation of, and not older
Mm.
mentors, not in the educational world. Is when, if you're on the bandstand, if you go to a gig or a jam session, and you got people there that you just automatically respect, and look up to, and they're on stage, that feeling, or that student apprentice relationship or master apprentice relationship is not as prevalent anymore. And but the ones that I do feel like can handle, thinking about that and dealing with that, it's just like I not only I talk about it, I share my stories about my experiences of when I got my butt completely handed to me, but then I make them work that much harder on something. For example, I have, well, one student who wants to be told how great they are, and it's like, all right, here's transcribe Freddie the Freeloader. Here you go, perfect. Then I got another student that's really trying and really putting the time and the effort in, even if they're making this much progress every few weeks, but really wants it. It's all right. I'm going to give you Lazy Bird, and we're going to really dive into this because you have the will and you have the desire to work that much harder and put that much more into it, and to be able to deal with the truths that you got to live, about all the stuff that you're going to have to deal with every week. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I would
Mhm.
approach that. It's really dependent on the person.
Organ is a different situation too, because it's such a cumbersome and expensive instrument to get started. Usually people start off in church, and my first, well, usually, people that I know started off in church, whatever, because it's a predominant instrument, and especially the African American church. But my first experience at playing organ was one of my worst experiences in the world, because I was playing with our church choir and we got invited to another church. They didn't have a piano there. So the guy who played before me was killing it. And the sound, I was like, man, that sound is perfect, right? So I know I'm going next. I hustle up to the B3, and the cat pushes in all the drawbars. And I was like, dude, hey man, how do I get back to that sound? He's like, you got to figure it out. And I'm like, figure it out. I've never even played organ before, right? And whatever, I think I pulled out the wrong drawbars, was playing at a different key. It was so weird. And I was like, man, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I don't have anything to practice on. And in any style of music, there's a lot of jerks, a lot of people but when he pushed in all the drawbars and like, hey man, this is my sound kind of thing. I'm like, bro, what is that? Have you had any experiences like that with or have you played like in church and stuff, and you get those kind of uh B3 players that come out of church and stuff like that, or is that And not to say that that's the experience you should have, but what is your experience with that?
Directly related to the organ like that. No, I haven't had experiences like that. It's always been more related to the music in of itself.
Right. Okay.
Um, I mean, for me, thankfully, at such a young age, uh, since I was so into the instrument and like yeah, all B3 all the time. I mean,
Right.
I studied so much about the instrument ahead of time. I was very fortunate that way, and also knowing some of the technical aspects of repairing the instrument. But at the same time, I mean, the parallel would be like just straight up music. I might have told you this story before, I might not have. My very first gig with Lou Donaldson, we were playing at the
Mm.
Left Bank Jazz Festival in Baltimore. This gosh, this had to be 2002, maybe something like that. And so I drive down with him and his wife. I'm, sitting in the back of their Lincoln Continental. They're dressed in their Sunday best up front. We go to the gig. I'm nervous because it's Lou Donaldson. And so we get up into the festival, and there's going to be 500 people in there. And Lou was always stickler about everything. He wanted everything a certain way. And so he looks over to me after we play the first tune, Blues Walk, and he goes, "Okay, the masquerade is over." And I like, "Oh, Lou, I'm sorry, I don't know it." He goes, "Well, you're going to learn it right now." So he just counts off the tune, and I'm up there, just freaking out. It's like, but I just like listen to the guitar player, and after a couple of choruses, I more or less had it figured out finally. But that's mute those kind of musical situations like that.
Right.
Or first time I got to play with or one of the times I got to play with George Coleman, I was really nervous because it's the legendary George Coleman. Room's packed. And he's like, "All right, the first tune we're going to do Days of Wine and Roses," and I'm thinking, okay, great, I know this tune inside and out. This is going to be really fun.
I've
And he
never.
looks at me and goes, "All right, we're doing the key of E though." He starts playing it at E. So, I mean, music from a musical aspect, getting now that kind of stuff thrown at you, yeah, I think it's happened for sure.
Especially when it's done a half step away. You're like you're a half step away from where it could be. We do
Well,
it in E.
exactly, exactly. But I mean, he killed it. I made it through by the skin of my teeth.
Right, right,
But it's
right.
like, but that's all that kind of stuff. I think, the situation you described, or some of the things, and Chris, I'm sure you have some stories too. That would be really great to hear what you have to say about it. But that I think really is key to development.
Yeah.
'Cause if it's all easy, and if it's handed to you, with a pat on the shoulder, I mean, how deep is it going to be really, or how much of you is it going to feed that hunger of wanting to grow or continue growing?
Yeah. If a caterpillar gets assistance coming out of the cocoon, then the wings won't be strong enough to fly. So, you have to let that caterpillar that's gone through its transformation break out of the cocoon
Hmm.
and get strong enough. It is if we, that's the only way you can get it. Well, not the only way, but for the most part, you have to have some type of adversity to be like, okay, I really want this thing. I really want to go forward, and how I deal with it.
Yeah. Chris, what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think you're those are the moments that, I mean, for me, I'm very, for lack of a better word, I could be real vindictive. So I'm like, I'm taking names, and trust me, man, I've gotten a lot of them.
Mhm.
Through the years. Some of them I can't get to because they didn't come this way. But I've told Tyrone plenty of stories of guys that I've gotten that, and it comes full circle sometimes. When you do the vibing, you better be prepared to
Yep.
to get some of that back. But it I don't it made me stronger, so I can't hate those people for doing that, because it did
Sure.
make me a better musician. I've seen guys tap out though from that too. So it's
Right.
kind of like, there's a line there that not everybody can get across, but I think it separates, for lack of a, better
Mhm.
phrase, it separates the men from the boys, or the women from the girls. It's like you have to build that thick skin in order to achieve anything.
Yeah.
I mean, not just what we do, but because then there's always people that are going to want to keep you down, to, especially if they see you come. If they see you and they know that you're coming for, they're going to try to find a way to throw you off, and uh you have to figure out a way on your own, or with or asking. That's so this is another, asking questions. Ask, hey, I'm in this situation, what would you do? That's another thing that's lost, is like you don't get that very much anymore. It's, how would you approach this? What's your take on whatever. So yeah, I'm off.
Where was I sitting? Where was I sitting with the last Pat Bianchi concert?
Man, you were sitting in this cat's pocket, dude. I was like, hey man, can you back up a little bit? Give the man some space.
You heard my breathing pattern.
I had no idea until I looked around and we were going to play that blues just to make sure you were there.
I was soaking it in, bro. And my wife, she likes to dictate where we sit. And usually I'm like, I'm not going to make this a thing. I was like, this is where we're sitting at right here.
So we have another question for all of this. Question for all of us. This is from Weatherford 2913. Do we know who that? I wonder if we know who that is. Is this Weatherford? Do we know any Weatherfords? Do we know any Weatherfords?
Guitar question, bro. This is Oregon.
Do we know any Weatherfords? Anyway, I'm guessing that this may be a Weatherford that we know, but I don't know. But he says, would love to know what is the best advice someone has given each of you. So that's an interesting question. Why don't you go first, T?
Oh, wow, me? Let's see. Okay, I remember I was an education major in school, and Ellis pulled me in. It was crazy because Ellis Marcellus moved back to New Orleans from Virginia. He got the endowed from Coca-Cola to bring him back to New Orleans. So he picked a staff of people and then went and was telling everybody to go study with his father. So we had an influx of people, but there weren't a lot of piano players. And I was mainly a classical pianist, and with education, music ed being the major. And Ellis, I was just kind of hanging around the jazz guys, and I was like, hey man, you want to come be a part of this? And it was a liberal arts major, was the performance major, and then ed was another like side of the building kind of thing, right? So I got in just at the right time because the next semester we had an influx of great piano players that came in. So if I would have waited a semester, I wouldn't have got in. But needless to say, I'm starting to get a little bit better. And he says, Jackson, he says, listen, I was an educator. He says, if you're going to do this jazz thing, you're going to have to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard even. So he's like, hey, you got to keep up what's going on. You're going to think about if you're going to be teaching in school, you got to go hang out, because those cats who are playing, that's all they're doing. They're shedding, they're working, they're hanging out with cats, they're going to sessions, they're shedding with other cats, whatever. You can't do any of that kind of stuff. So you're going to have to really work a lot harder keeping up what's going on. And I think that advice helped me think about, even if I'm teaching or I'm doing whatever other job I'm doing or wherever it is, you got to keep up with what's going on around you. No matter, you can get in a rut of doing the things that you normally do, but things are always moving, man. You got to keep up with what's going on with the people, with the cast that's playing and stuff like that. So I think that was one of the best advice I have gotten from someone.
Pat?
I think it's, in terms of playing, a teacher of mine in college, who was a big influence on me. There's 2 things that he had said. First thing is, and it's still to this day, it's not always the easiest thing to do, but listen first, play second. Because sometimes you get so caught up at the moment you go, but if you can do that, you're always going to be, it's going to always be better. And the other thing is just remember, it's kind of like the never-ending state of getting there. So it's just like always work and you always have something to work towards. I mean, that could be applied to anything in life or anything you do in life, I'm sure. But it's never you're never really there. It's always a,
Mhm.
it's always a journey. Excuse me, always a journey. So
Mhm.
those two things really had stuck with me over the years for sure.
That's cool.
Wow. For me, you know, my father was a big influence. He wasn't a musician, but he loved music. He loved the arts. He taught me a lot about just listening and the but he was really big on one thing, and that was being different, trying being an individual and not following the crowd. And I think that's the best advice. I think it saved my behind many a time. Is do something different. Don't do what everybody else is doing. That's always in my mind. I'm always thinking about that. And when it comes to playing, I try to follow. We all have our influences and that, but I try to, I try to do my own thing. So that's, I think, the best advice I've probably gotten.
It's really great.
Yeah.
We have another question. What do you think about Matthew Whitaker? If y'all don't know who he
Oh
is,
man, I know
yeah.
Matt. Yeah, I played with Matthew. Yes, sir.
Okay.
He's great.
Yeah.
We got to hang together and play a little bit at the NAMM show this year. Really,
Oh,
really
cool.
sweet cat. Really, really talented. He's one of the few. I mean, I'm putting myself out there by saying this, but it's the honest truth. That is truly of the tradition. And that when I hear when he's playing jazz, we'll put it
Right.
when I hear him playing jazz organ, so to speak, because I mean he's a killing obviously gospel player and has a whole
Right.
bunch of stuff going on. When he's
Right.
doing kind of the straight ahead thing, it feels like you know coming there's the Jimmy Smith thing, there's the McGriff thing, it feels like that which is a spirit that is because there's different times, different musical influences, is not as prevalent. I don't hear it as often in organ players.
Mm.
That underlying thing, I mean, but I mean, he's such an incredibly gifted cat and great person too. Really, a really
Nice.
great person.
Yeah.
I wasn't hip to his organ stuff until later. I don't know which one he's first. Is he a pianist first and then an organist, or was he kind of like both?
I think he was a pianist first. I think he came to organ a little bit later. If
That's
I
what I thought.
remember correctly.
Yeah. He could play some drums too. He could play.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. 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 His
John
fun. Yeah.
Mamatune. Go ahead.
His parents are great people. I've had a
Yeah.
chance to hang and to meet and to play. And actually, there's someone else we need to reach out and get him on the show and talk to him. A lot of people would love to hear hear him talk about his journey and some of the things he's doing. So we'll try to get him on the show. That was a good question. Thanks, Bill. John. All right. He
This is
asked.
crazy. I was going to ask you about this too.
This is interesting. So, okay,
Yeah.
man. Okay, so you guys are
Yeah.
teaching me something. I didn't know Basie was a. So he said, did you like Count Basie's organ playing?
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it was great. I mean, it reminds me obviously of his piano playing, just
Right.
like the same way. There's a couple recordings of Oscar playing organ too,
Right.
and I wouldn't say it's for the times he wasn't the same. It wasn't as deep in as say like Bill Doggett, Bill Davis, um, you know, Jackie Davis on them. But I mean, he plays a lot of great tasteful stuff, and the feel is swinging.
Right.
Of course. And a lot of people kind of sleep on a lot of those older cats too, and it's worth checking out. I mean, if you go back to some recordings of Fats Waller,
Yeah.
where he's
Yeah.
playing, it was kind of interesting to listen to because he's playing very classically, like he'd be playing a spiritual very classically on the organ, very straight, almost sounds like Bach, if you will. And then when he solos, it's swinging, like so swinging, like, and it's orchestrally, like a big band of like the 30s, just the whole thing. But it's really incredible to listen to. But all of them have a lot to bring to the instrument in different ways. So yeah, I dug Basie's playing. If people are familiar with Wild Bill Davis, it's worth checking out too. You know, and I believe he wrote the arrangement for April in Paris, and actually played it with Duke's band.
Wow.
All right, we had another question. Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yeah,
I got a
we got
couple
some.
of what do you, some of the people that I like is Charles Erlin. I like uh, Booker T. Jones.
Hmm.
I like all those other kind of cats. Larry Goldings, of course, yourself. There was a Chester Thompson, obviously with the the funky kind of stuff too.
Have you heard the Chester's first recording?
No.
It's kind of he's kind of scary. I mean, if he wanted to, he could have been a scary straight ahead player. He's doing
Really?
tempos and changes, bass lines are off the hook. It was his
Wow.
first. I'm trying to remember the name. I can look it up later, but it's if you just Chester Thompson.
I saw a
Brian,
YouTube
maybe Brian can look that up. Chester Thompson from Tower of Power. Brian, his first recording. See if we can find.
But yeah, I heard there's a YouTube video of him talking about.
There's a clinic, right? The clinic,
Yeah.
when he's doing the clinic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad to the bone. I was like, dang.
Yeah, that technique he developed all himself. With the bass pedals, doubling the notes and everything. Yeah.
That's crazy. If you could briefly kind of, I know this is kind of like we're not looking for an exhaustive thing, but what are some of the cats that in the lineage of the jazz organ and maybe their innovations? Like, what is Jimmy Smith known for? What is Jack McDuff known for? Can you give us a couple of those?
Yeah. So for me, we'll start. So we can start with Jimmy Smith, who's basically the father of the modern.
Oh, there it is. Hang on.
There we go. Yeah,
is
that
that
record
it?
is
Okay.
Yeah, that's the record.
Who's on that record? Do you know who's on that record?
That I don't know. I think it was just a bunch of cats from the Bay Area. Maybe I don't know honestly, just off the top of my head.
Okay.
But Jimmy Smith, who sort of started it all, he took what Wild Bill Davis was doing and he made it more modern concept. Because Wild Bill Davis first. One thing Wild Bill Davis did that he never really got credited for was people talk about with the bass pedals, when you're playing walking bass lines with your left hand, you tap the bass pedal. Not always in unison, but you tap it quick enough so you have the attack, since the left hand doesn't have a strong attack. So you kind of do that to give like a feathering of a bass drum. And so Jimmy Smith took that technique and that Wild Bill Davis had done, but then added that right hand in there where he's playing more bebop type lines and versus chordal kind of block chord kind of things that the organists prior to him were doing. He came up with that sound that everybody has used, which is the first 3 drawbars out for the top keyboard with the percussion. It became the famous sound. And he kind of he came up with a thing called squabbling. What squabbling is, if you put on an organ on the top keyboard, you put the first drawbar out and usually the last 4, and you put the Leslie on fast, you can play kind of a block chord style where you're playing everything. Sometimes I'll play it like this, where I'm just playing the octaves and then playing around. Some people actually play 6 chords and inversions. And the guitar player plays quarter notes behind you, comps quarter notes, which is kind of, Jimmy Smith came up with to emulate Errol Garner. So he brought that to it. Also the more of the fluidity of the instrument. I mean, Jimmy Smith started it with very staccato in his playing. Everything was broken. Then it smoothed out as the years went on. It became much more legato. And he came up with the whole technique of sliding. If you play a phrase and you say, for example, you want to work up your line, you end up on a D and you want to work up to a G, instead of playing chromatics, he would literally take his note and just slide, since it was not weighted. He'd play and slide. And if you listen to some of those recordings, like The Boss is a perfect example. You could hear him do it. He's playing lines, sliding to a note, sliding to another note. So, I mean, Jimmy Smith is where it all started. Jimmy McGriff, for my taste, not everybody may agree, but for my taste, he was the one that really started to fuse what was going on in the church with gospel organists and the elements of the blues, and along with, the blues like R&B blues at the time, and put that together. If you listen to a recording called it's on a solid state record, Bag Full of Soul. And if there's like Danny Boy, DB Blues. You hear so much stuff that I would equate to with hearing with the church in terms of church organists playing, in terms of the Leslie voicings, phrasing, but bringing that element, because Jimmy Smith had the blues, but he didn't always, for my ears or things that I've heard, always have elements of gospel in his playing. So Jimmy McGriff brought a lot of that, and nobody could play a shuffle like Jimmy McGriff as far as he was the best for that. McDuff, for me, I mean, composition was a big thing and arrangement. He was like the Art Blakey of the jazz organ world in a lot of ways. He brought up so many young players who played in his band through the years, and just the arrangements and soulful playing. Don Patterson, bebop. I mean, straight up bebop. He brought that because the other guys didn't play as much bebop, but the Don Patterson was all about bebop. Larry Young, obviously, talking about fourths, pentatonics, things like that. I always feel like it was like the McCoy Tyner of organ to me. Just the way he would voice things and play, and conversations with Elvin. Is another example. I mean, then there's Shirley Scott. A lot of people don't always talk about her as much, but she had trios. A lot of times she played with bass, and she was one of the few that really made it work. It was just so swinging and so incredible. Like one of them great Scott early impulse recording is really worth having. And the other thing about Shirley too is obviously she can play left-hand bass. There's some great videos on YouTube with Harold Vick on saxophone and Bobby Durham on drums, and she's playing her own bass and just killing it. And she's a great pianist, and also big into educating. And actually, she mentored a lot of people that I've had the opportunity to work with, like Tim Moorfield, Terrell Stafford, a lot of the Philadelphia players she mentored. And then Trudy Pitts is another one out of Philadelphia, and she was another incredible organist and classically trained pianist as well, and could play pipe organ. But I have a recording of her that's the exciting Trudy Pitts, and there's a blues on there that you almost think it's Jimmy Smith playing. It's just throwing down, and everything is incredible. So those kind of contributions, and then Samuel, Larry Goldings, they brought a different perspectives to the instrument in terms of phrasing, sound, vocabulary. Drawing from Larry Young, and even some pianistic elements. Joey putting it all together and then taking it to another level. So there's, and people in between. Groove Holmes, strongest bass lines. And of course that right hand was killing. And those guys, were like, they were all road warriors too. Pack everything up, like I heard you guys talk about earlier. Pack everything up in the car and go to the next gig. The next gig, Charlie Earland. I mean, nothing grooves like that. Like from Black Talk, even the later stuff, it's just like relentless. And with Charlie Earland, the funny story that I had heard is we had the honor of working with Pat Martino for almost 9-10 years. And Pat knew Charles as a tenor player, which was his first instrument. He was gigging as a tenor player. And then, like everybody else, after hearing Jimmy Smith, he decided he was going to switch to organ. So they had a gig, and Pat says, his very first organ gig, everything we played had to be in C minor because he only knew how to play in the key of C minor.
Oh, wow.
And then eventually, grew into all the stuff he done over the years. So,
wow.
All right, we've got some more questions from the Instagram. Let's see. Willoughby77 asks another question. He says, for each of you, what is your top jazz organ album? Woo! That's a tough one, man. You want to go first, T?
I'll say Damn. That's because that's the one started it all for me. But there's a lot of them. But I'll just say Damn because that's the one. Jimmy Smith. That one. Hearing that was like, wow. And coming from my household, that was a provocative kind of thing. What album are you listening to? Listen
to Damn. and some of the album covers, right?
Oh yeah,
especially like the some of the Jack McDuff's. I mean, those are like
right.
Woo, buddy. There's all some different stuff, man. What about you, Pat? What would you? I mean, I know it's hard to
No, I mean, I was just thinking about some story. Pat Martin, because he toured with McDuff after George left the
yeah,
band. He
yeah.
talked about, man, I remember Jack getting ready and doing his hair, and he's like, you could smell that stuff for miles, man, make your eyes water.
That's funny. That is funny.
But for me, I'm gonna say recording wise, and Jimmy Smith live at Small's Paradise Volume 1 and Volume 2, and to a lot of people, they're not gonna like that record because Jimmy is not he's not playing the laid back, blues and stuff like that. I mean, he's like doing Monk. I mean, he's like doing like trying to do those kind of things on the organ. I mean, distance all over the place, but the energy and the sheer, they did Sweet Georgia Brown. I think the track was like 20 minutes long, and it's just insane. And he had to be in his late 20s, I think, at that when it was recorded. And recorded live at Small's Paradise, which was in Harlem. But then there's another recording. Cool Blues, which was recorded at Small's Paradise, which I love too. But it's Art Blakey on drums, Tina Brooks, Eddie McFadden on guitar, and Lou Donaldson, and the whole thing is just, I mean, especially with Art Blakey playing, it's just like off the charts. So that's my absolute favorite. And then Desert Island track, which is easier for me to do because it's like there's certain tracks that stand out for me, was Jody Francesco, Street of Dreams, that version of Black Nile that they play on that recording, which really to me was one of the few things that it kind of showcased how that trio would play live, because they're like really going for stuff that you don't hear in studio albums as much.
Right. Man, I mean, it's like impossible. I mean, I'm going through modern stuff. There's a lot of modern stuff I love. The Sam Yael stuff, the Goldings. I mean, your stuff, Pat. I mean, there's a Striker with Jared Gold. I mean, there's a million. But man, I always the album. I think that I just go back to what started it for me, which was the Sermon. Man, I mean, that was, Blakey, and I mean that was like Blakey doesn't even play that. I don't think he plays a fill on the first track. It's like it's just this, so that taught me so much about like discipline and just like, at the time, just really, I had never played with any organ, with any B3 players at all. I'd listen to that record and be like, man, that's interesting. So he's not playing, because I'm used to like Free for All and Indestructible, that Blakey. So to hear him in a completely, it's like, wow, man, that's interesting. But the Sermon, man, for me, I mean, I could name a 1,000, but I'll just say the Sermon for me is.
Pat, are you familiar with? I'm trying to think. Joey D's album, is it Organist View or something like that? But there's a song on there called "The Tackle." You ever heard that song?
We used to play that.
You used to play that
with it when we were doing. Remind me, I'll send you a lead sheet if you want on it.
I need it because I think it sounds like it's a contrafact of what is this thing called?
Called Love. Okay. Yeah, we would play it when I was playing with that trio in 2008. And we had done a bunch of dates around the States, and that was one of the tunes he was doing then. And yeah, it's contrafacting one of these things called Love, but there's things at the end of every phrase. Sometimes it ends on or starts on 3 or ends on 3. Yes. Sometimes it's 4. It always flipped me around.
That junk. I was like, listen to that album, and I was like, this song, The Tackle, what an appropriate title, because that junk was sacking me every time.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those. It took me a long time to get it, years, and and I have to review it now and then if I'm gonna ever play it. Like I was supposed to play it a couple years back at a tribute, and it was like, yeah, I need a little more time with it because it's just the timing. It's like a 4/4 bar. I would turn it into a 3/4 bar. Didn't leave enough because it sounds so similar, but it's just different places. But that's a great tune. Yeah, that's from is that the Bobby Hutcherson that was on the record?
Okay, yeah. That's a great, and I think he do. I thought about you. I think that's on that one too. I can't
Little
remember.
Bee's poem, I think.
Yeah. You So you mentioned that you played
Actually,
with.
let's do one more question, T,
Oh,
because
okay,
we
great.
got somebody that put this question in a while back, and we haven't got to it. So this is from Nadia.ho. She says she wants to know basically that we were talking about the older cat tough love on the bandstand and mentorship today, and she was wondering why, or they're wondering, I don't know if it's a female, but why do you think that's not as prevalent anymore, is what they're asking.
The bandstand versus education, they're two different entities altogether. They're both trying to do, ultimately, it's the goal is the same, where you're trying to teach people, educate them, help them with their playing, whether it be you're in the school system, college. Uh, but the bandstand is a different situation, and it's, there's certain things, and it's not even, how do I say, it's a different environment. You're real time. There's no, okay, let's stop the band and let's try this again. You're real time having to do stuff and having to get it together. And I think it's just a different thing. And the opportunities aren't the same anymore. I mean, just the amount of venues are not the same as they were 40 years ago, 30 years, 20 years ago. So those, you don't see that as much. But thankfully, there is the education system and higher education that is helping to fill that void, and still teach people and help people grow. So it's different times, different circumstances. That's to me what it boils down to.
Yeah,
cool. Mm-hmm.
Well said.
Yeah. All right, T, you had something. What were you going to ask something?
So I think I heard correctly that you were in the band with Joey D.
Mm-hmm.
Because last time I saw him when I was in Chicago, he had this cat. I think his name was Scott something. I can't think of his name. He played guitar and B3, so they had two B3s on the stage. I think he had an A or something.
Lucas Brown, probably.
Lucas, thank you.
Yeah.
Lucas. And it was killing, man. And Joey D is a heck of a trumpet player too. He sounds like Miles and stuff, and he played sax on that as well. And I think he played something else, but I can't remember. But anyway, it was kind of cool. So, what was the configuration like when you guys were playing together?
He wasn't playing much trumpet then. It was depending on the backline situation or what they get called for. Sometimes I'd be playing the Nord and doing Rhodes. Sometimes there would be an organ. It would be two organs and still Rhodes on top. Because sometimes he wanted to get up front. A couple times he did play trumpet, so somebody else would play organ. There were a couple instances where we did did concerts that was two B3s, which was literally like two organist thing, no Rhodes or nothing like that. But that was pretty early on. But it was a similar kind of thing to what you described that Lucas was doing, except that obviously I don't play guitar, or would want to try very well. I couldn't figure that out to save my life. It's a different way of looking at things, but it was cool, man. I mean, just sitting up there with him and Byron, and just throwing to the wolves, and and just like, think I play a great solo, then he come and play 10 times more stuff, and it's like, okay, that's how you learn, though.
Right.
We got one other question from Bill Hatcher. Can you guys elaborate on the rhythm feel of the organ trio and how there is no feeling of restraint as to forward motion? Piano, upright, bass trios feel totally different than the floating feeling of B3 trios. Also ask about Larry.
I think you talked about Larry Young too, so yeah. All right.
Well, that's the thing with that really defines the difference in the feel between the two for me is if you listen to the organ bass, it's like, if I always do this, to demonstrate to my students, imagine, it's kind of an arc, like, it's kind of a rounded thing with the organ bass, because there's not a lot of definition to the note. I mean, it's like an acoustic or electric bass, you could hear that point very clearly. I mean, it's clear as day. So that kind of is one thing that I feel like attributes to the feeling of the floating, if you will, because you don't hear that point in the same way, or you don't feel it the same way as you would acoustic bass or electric bass. And if you're not usually used to hearing it or working with it, it takes a minute to get used to for sure. It's just different in that way. And you know what? Uh, a lot of almost every organ player you listen to in a recording, the time does fluctuate a little bit. I mean, if you're doing two jobs at once,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of stuff. I mean, the best of the best. So there is that element of it. It's like if my only job was to make sure my quarter notes were dead on with Chris's ride cymbal, which is to me is like the key thing with bass and drums, then it's less. I mean, obviously, that's our job. We're just working on keeping our lock. Happening with organs, since there's more stuff going on, it can feel like it floats a little bit more. And sometimes it does. I mean, so when you're doing two jobs at once, it adds a bunch of stuff, and everybody does it to some extent or another.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just nature's beast. So
yeah, I mean, I think I almost have a. To me, it's almost like playing with another drummer.
mm-hmm.
I'm not as obviously you hear the voicings, you hear the chords, you hear the harmony, whatever, but I'm getting this like this back and forth thing when I play with with the right cat. It's like, and I can tell instantly whether or not this is going to work because there's a certain sort of thing that I especially if there's rhythmic things going on, which what we picked up instantly from each other when we play. I mean, from the down, is like, okay, yeah, okay, is that rhythmic thing. I think sometimes with piano and bass, I mean, it can get rhythmic, definitely, but I think there's so much more of a role for the bass player in an acoustic in a trio situation. Sometimes they tend to not, I don't know, they're not as elastic maybe as the organ, like Tyrone. If I'm playing with the piano, we're going at it all night long, but the bass player sometimes, I mean, sometimes, yeah, it's cool, somebody's got to stay home, but it's also cool when it's like, let's get this tornado going and let's really, try to kind of, you want to build that illusion as to where things really are sometimes. And I think with the organ, it's so natural, man, when you're playing with the right. I mean, if you're playing more groove, even then it's like there's still like this instant connect with the drums. I don't know. That's how I kind of feel about it. What do you think, T?
I think it's if you're a control freak, it works out for you.
Type A.
Right? If
yeah,
it could work out, but if you have the right person, like one other person, poor guitar player, let them play chords, whatever. But if you can connect with the drummer and you can go different directions, it cuts out one less person to get in the way of doing it. So the bass player, man, how do you express something? Usually you can't play voicings that have a bass note in it because they control the harmony essentially. I mean, it's a democratic process, but sometimes I play with bass players that they will never play my changes. I have to play theirs all the time, and that's fine, but I don't like that all the time. I'm an interactionist, so I want to see what everybody has to do. So, cutting out a middleman, a bass player, is perfect for me at this point. I was like, hey, I can make these decisions. Guitar players might not like me, but hey, yeah.
Well, I think it's being kind of like, if everybody has common vocabulary,
Right.
that's
right.
And trust, no matter the instrument, I think it allows for conversation and allows for things to develop or go different directions. I think if those two elements are present, then it's just like, so much can happen. It doesn't matter if it's organ and drums and guitar, or if it's piano, bass, and drums. I mean, if that chemistry is there, it's there.
Right.
And I think it's when you find it, it's a rare thing to, you don't always find it.
Yeah. I mean,
and the trust. So go ahead.
yeah, if I listen to the saxophone trio stuff without no chordal instrument, that's a vibe too, because me and the
Mhm.
piano player were getting away sometimes
Mhm.
of those type of decisions. So yeah, but like you said, it all boils down to your chemistry and your listening and what you share. If you are an interactionist, some people are not. Some
Yeah,
people
Right.
they want to
function.
be supported, and that's it, and that's fine.
Right. Right.
So
Right. Well,
Well, perfect.
common vocabulary is a good way to put it, Pat. That's
Yeah,
like a great, because common vocabulary is, when that's there, and it's, and I used to hear about that. I used to, when I was really first trying to play straight ahead, I didn't, because I never went to school or anything. So I was just learning from records, recordings, and practicing and whatever, and then getting on the bandstand and getting ushered off and not getting allowed to come back for 6 months. But, you know, the kind of thing but the things I used to hear was, man, yeah, it's so cool. Man, this cat played something from a phrase or a lick from a recording that I recognize. And then I jumped on that and I'm like going, what are y'all talking about? How do y'all know? Like, how do you know? Like, that type of deep listening, right? Of knowing where somebody's coming from in turn, especially like in a solo context, or uh and you can hear, it's like, oh, that's like an instant. And I can hear a lot of that now, but back then I was like, what are y'all talking about? How do you know, like, you know
yeah.
uh when that stuff's happening? So that's a great common vocabulary. I'm gonna steal that one. That's a good one. Common vocabulary.
Go.
Yeah, man. uh the organ trio is like being on a fast horse. That's interesting,
a
Bill.
wild ride.
Okay. All right. We got one more. Here's an interesting. I don't even. So I think this is for you, Pat.
Mhm.
ND Music 90 asks thoughts on Babyface Willette. Also, can you speak to the idea of playing over changes versus playing through changes? So that would be for you guys.
Okay. Well, baby, I haven't admittedly checked out a lot of Babyface Silhouettes. A couple
Okay.
things I have heard. It kind of reminded me of what was going on in the Blue Note era, '60s era. A lot of organ players that were putting out records at that time, Bogaloos and stuff like that, just really grooving and feel good melodic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but admittedly, to get into deep discussion, I haven't spent enough time with him. Playing through the changes versus over the changes. Through the changes, I always think vertical. Over the changes, horizontal. So, for example, you could, in a certain respect, you can think of bebop as playing through the changes, playing more like motivically, but still playing, making, kind of acknowledging the changes. I might think, and more lyrically, I might think it was a way to play through the changes. I'm not defining every chord. I'm not always arpeggiating, hitting chord tones, things, as everyone goes by. And for a little while, it might be playing common tones, or it might be playing in the key area, while acknowledging if a modulation happens or something different happens. I always think of like Keith Jarrett. To me, he's making the changes, but he's playing over. He's not. Sometimes I think of somebody like, and who I love, but Powell. You're hearing all that stuff just go by, literally. So to
Yeah,
me, that's how we differentiate between the two, especially in terms of motivic development.
yeah.
How about you?
Bud Powell's like Bach. It's like, it's like, but he's the Charlie Parker on piano.
Mhm. Yeah.
Truly innovator for that style. Yeah, I agree. I think that was a great, concise definition of it, and uh, at least whoever's doing it, whether they're playing through it or over it, at least they playing the changes. So
Yeah. No chromatic slither.
Well, well, listen, man, we're gonna get you out of here. We got one more that I want to bring up, and I know you got a long day of driving tomorrow. We're trying to get you in bed at a at a reasonable hour here, brother.
That's all good.
So, but we really appreciate you coming on, and
Great to hang
we'll
with you all and
definitely do
talk.
more. We'll do more of this kind of stuff. So, but one thing that I want to, and this is like a personal question, but I'm sure that other people will dig it too. I'm sure our producer extraordinaire will love this one. So, opening for Steely Dan, man.
Mm-hmm.
So, talk a little bit about, because I know that Fagan loves organ trio. So that particular tour, I think they were using organ trios, right, for their openers on all their shows. So you played Dave Stryker, and Jared and McClinty. I know that
Yep.
they played. So he was, it was really cool. Goldings, and so it was like just all the great organ trios were opening. So how did you get the call, and tell us a little bit about that experience?
I received a phone call from he was sort of musical director. I think he still is actually. Great trumpet player Michael Lenhart, who plays in the band, and that Donald was looking for some different for an organ trio to open up on a certain run, and he asked me to send some material. So I did a handful of dates. Um, I'll never forget because it's like I flew back from Japan, went to Martino, slept for a little while, and then drove to near Indianapolis because they don't provide backline. You have to bring your own gear, which is typical for that kind of thing. And so I did it the year after um, with a couple different groups. I had brought we started the tour with at the Beacon with Tane and Paul Ballenbeck, which I was scared to death because I was playing with. I was like Tane was like God as far as I'm concerned, musical God. I mean, so it was amazing. Then
Right.
did it with it was a great vehicle because like I brought vibraphones Joe Locken, I brought in Mark Whitfield, Byron, a couple other people to do these different gigs, and it was a learning experience in terms of the production / business side of things. Everything runs to a T. You play 30 minutes, you better be off better because they have to make a stage switch. You got to be ready 10 minutes before, so that means you got to be up on stage 15 minutes before. So all those kind of things that really, are they don't get talked about as often. So it's different kind of scene. But Donald was great. I mean, I just tend to like people like that. I just don't want to bother them because I know they get hounded all the time. But the times we talked or whatever, it was always really cool. Everybody in the band was cool. The hardest thing to me with a situation like that is here is an organ trio opening up for to an audience that really doesn't care that you're there because they're there to see Steely Dan. You just happen to be there, which hey, it's understandable. It's like so they but getting the audience on your side and just playing hard for 30 minutes to not compete, but to like get their attention. I mean, it taught me a lot. And, also considering the fact that something that's not talked about as often is like if you're an opening act, generally speaking, the house or the mix, whoever's doing front of house, your volume is much lower in the front of house than the main band. It's like when you go to a movie, you see like commercials, and all of a sudden the main movie comes on and like everything is just like 10 times louder. Same kind of thing. So it's like, okay, I still have to like, play with a ton of energy and get people's attention because you don't want to, finish a tune, play or, and like all of a sudden look out in the audience and people are just, not even know you're there, just climbing over their chairs for their beers. So it's like playing hard and playing the gig. And pacing that 30 minutes. How am I going to pace that? So it's play hard, come down a little bit, go out strong, whatever. Thinking about all those kind of things. It was a really great experience, for sure.
How many shows did you end up doing?
I did it over the course of two fall tours before the pandemic. One of them was like 7 dates, and the other one was like 15. And then as we were coming out of the pandemic, we did a tour. It was like 25 days.
Man,
So,
okay.
so it was, then you have to put everything together. So I figured out hotels, transportation, all that kind of stuff. They were kind enough to take our gear, which really helped out quite a bit,
Nice.
but it was uh, uh, road managing to another level, for sure, which I learned a ton from and thankful for too.
Right. Right.
Wow. Well, we're excited about Thursday night, man. Anything you want to tell anybody if they want to come out? Like what should they expect? Or I don't know.
Expect a good time.
There you go.
Have some laughs, a lot of great music, a good hang,
Nice.
and be there. Support live music.
Yeah. You have any products that you're going to sell?
Depending on how I play, I might get rid of the organ at night, man.
Oh, it's cold blooded.
Get rid of that.
Do you have any merch? Do you? Because somebody's actually asking about that.
Yeah, I'll bring some CDs. I'll bring some
CDs.
CDs. So
No t-shirts, no hats, man. What
No.
else is that?
We know a guy who needs some tank tops. If you, you got some Pat Bianchi with the tank
Pat
top,
Bianchi tank tops, man.
right?
Oh
Right.
man,
New York's finest.
New York. Manhattan, baby.
the price tag to go with it.
Well, listen, man. It's been a pleasure. We got a lot more stuff what we're gonna do.
Yeah, for sure.
Together, man. It's just great to have genuine fellowship, man, and
It is.
and then also connect musically. Doesn't happen all the time, so when those opportunities come up, man, it's always like wow, it's like a real gift, so looking forward to it. Yeah, man, absolutely, man. So looking forward to this weekend. If you guys are around the Atlanta area, we will be at Napoleon's in Decatur, 8 p.m. 2 sets of organ, Brother Jackson and Brother Bianchi. And, we're going to have a good time with that. And then we'll be up at Rudy's Jazz Room in Nashville, August 9th and 10th, for a 2-set throwdown each night. So we should get real loose,
I'll have to play both my solos then.
Yeah, right.
Use my lick and my chop.
I'm like, oh man,
It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna see all my tricks in the first song. So all right, we'll see.
It's gonna be fun to hang and play with both of you, man. I'm really looking forward to it. So
definitely
looking forward to it.
I'm gonna try to sneak out there. I'm gonna try to sneak out to Nashville.
He's thinking about it, man. He's really thinking about it, man. He's thinking about coming.
I got a faculty meeting on Friday, and I might two. Got the College of the Arts meeting and then the School of Music meeting. So thinking about maybe easing out there on Friday. And
yeah, man.
Yeah. I'm thinking.
So and Willow Beast 70 keeps throwing in. Get to Cleveland soon. What's the club in Cleveland? Is it
no?
What is the name of that spot, man?
In Cleveland Heights, I think it is. There's the Bop Stop. There's another place.
I played there a few times.
Jim Wadsworth used to book it.
Nighttown or something like. Is it Nighttown? Yeah. But I don't know if did they close? Somebody told me that they
closed. I thought I heard they reopened. I'm not sure though.
Okay. So, but if you're in the Ohio area, this cat wants to see you, man, or any of us.
If he starts driving now, he'll get the time of the gig on Thursday.
There you go.
It's not that far.
I'm kidding.
All right, guys. Well, thank you, Pat. We will see you
for having me.
Yeah, man, and we will see you.
If y'all want to see Pat, everybody who's listening, if y'all want to see Pat, you gotta come out Thursday, Friday, or Saturday to see him.
That's right.
So we about to cut him off right now, bro. So you can't talk to him anymore.
All right, man. I'll see you soon, brother.
All right, you have a great night. Thank you so much.
You too.
All right, cool.
Later.
All right, peace. Man, that was so cool, man. I can't wait, bro. I just can't wait. And to play too. I can't wait to play. And Yeah, just see where the thing goes, man. Because it's definitely gonna be two different styles. But yeah, I'm going
That's what
first
the
with
beauty. That's the. I mean, that
weights.
to me is. I don't know why that's such a. You know, it's just not. It's like I think we've gotten into this thing where everybody sounds the same.
Yeah,
Um, and it's. I know that there's part of it is that everybody's tricks are so readily available because you can. Everybody's recording you, or you're recording yourself, so you're putting your stuff up. So you know, cats can, man. I mean, you being studied right now, you don't even know it. You know what I
right,
mean? I
right.
mean, and I'm guilty of that too. If I,
Yeah, but
I
I
can sit
mean,
there,
yeah, you
but I can
can.
sit there. You can sit there, man, and watch anybody as long as you want. So slow mo, you can do slow everything down. It used to be just you had to listen, rewind back, listen, rewind. You know what I'm saying? So you would
Well, actually,
sometimes not even get
before that, jam sessions was as soon as
or
you
go
heard,
out to see actually go out and see
yeah,
somebody.
as soon
Right.
as you go see Bird or Train, you'd immediately hit the jam session to try to emulate. You would never get really what it was, but you come up with something actually kind of cool.
Some kind of
Right.
version
Hybrid
of that.
version.
Yep.
Right, right.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
you're trying to like, what did I hear? And let me see if I try it
Yep.
out and see
Yep.
what happens.
Man,
So,
I mean, many ideas of going to see cats wherever, and you just because you get something in your head, you think you heard it a certain way, and but by the time you get home, it's you're basically getting what a fraction of that, or you're like, it was something like this. Let me try to figure this out, and then you're like on your way to like coming up with this new idea of your own. And those days are over, man. I mean, and that's why we get we have the verbatim dilemma. Everything is verbatim. It's like, man, you know, uh, ugh. It's hard to find cats who are doing their own thing.
well, same things happen in sports right now. You got trainers that's teaching everybody certain moves. Like Euro step, you step back, crossover. You got,
Mhm,
the sham god. He's teaching everybody his
mhm,
move. He's getting paid.
mhm,
Olajuwon
mhm,
is teaching everybody. So you don't have those players that like like uh George Mikan. He had the hook, but then Kareem did the sky hook, which is a little bit different. So
mhm,
it's
mhm,
like these variations off of moves and stuff like
mhm,
that is
mhm.
those people figuring out what's going on now. There's a trainer for everything. I'm going to show you this crossover, and everybody's doing the same exact move.
Right,
And I mean,
right,
it's effective, but where's the originality? Where's like,
right.
whatever. So,
Well, I was watching uh Return of the Dragon the other night, and
mhm,
just Bruce Lee. It was his third movie. It was the one with
right,
Chuck Norris in it. And at the
right,
end, they're fighting this fight, the epic fight scene.
right,
And Chuck Norris is whipping Bruce Lee, and you know, and Bruce Lee just finally he's like, I gotta figure something out different, right? So he
yeah,
kind of gets up. What's he start doing? He starts bouncing.
right,
And he
but
goes into boxing technique,
right,
right? Which is straight coming from he was studying with Ali at the time. That's
right,
where he got this. No martial arts and that was like two completely different things. So
right,
here's Bruce taking this thing from Ali, and he's showing, and paying homage to Ali in that scene. That's what that scene is all
right,
about.
right,
Is
right,
that the boxing is the strongest sport, period. And that's what, so taking those things, those hybrid, I guess you call them hybrids, right? Like
right, right.
hybrids of take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's like, you know, I wish, cats would get back into that mindset, man,
Yeah,
instead of
yeah.
just copying things.
And to your point, what's the that documentary that Questlove came out with, Summer of
Summer, right behind me, Summer of Soul.
Summer of Soul. to
Mhm.
hear all the different bands going after each other. It was
Mhm.
just incredible. Like
Mhm.
Ohio
Mhm.
players was different from this, different from this person, different
Mhm.
from Nina Simone, and Nina Simone's set was killing
Mhm.
and political
Mhm.
at the same time. And you had,
Mhm.
it was a variation that the variation was good. So like I think you said before, we've gotten away from the showcases where you have multiple bands that would do stuff you can hear.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
So
that's well, hopefully, man, we can get a little bit into our students that we want to take on with our session that's coming up August 18th at the
yeah.
Balzer Theater.
And we're playing
Uh,
too. So it's gonna be a gig. It's gonna be us playing. So
right.
come
So
on,
we'll
join the
be at
uh,
the Balzer Theater for the LMXP jam session featuring the next generation of jazz. And to also clarify that, we play I mean, I play in a rock band. I mean, we play everything. It's not but teaching through jazz is what we that's man, if you can get that, you can go anywhere and play anything. All it's going to do is give you endless it's going to give you an endless vocabulary of things to choose from. Even this is what I know we haven't even really shout out too many of some of the guys that we've taken on, but Aiden Walsh King, man, he was. I mean, you're seeing it firsthand with this kid and what he's doing, how he's playing, how he's approaching the music, and whether he ends up, straight ahead or not, it's not the issue. It's that he's going to have so much depth in his playing that
well, we start with cats like Morgan Guerin, Kevin Oliver, Danny White Tanner.
absolutely.
When we saw them coming up,
Yep.
it was the same thing. Robert
Darren
English,
English,
yeah,
Robert Boone.
yeah,
These cat and they're into it's cool. They're into and whether or not yes, that can be a foundation for you, but you could take this anywhere, man. And
oh yeah, and
people
you
have
learn to listen on another level.
yeah,
You learn to
it's not about
digest on a different level.
it's not about 1959 through 1964. I mean,
No, no,
that's a small part
it's an error.
of,
Yeah, yeah,
so don't let people that, people want to just focus. That's all there is,
yeah,
we'll go toe to, man, let's go now. It's like, that was part of the issue that when we were trying to come up and trying to do stuff is
yeah.
we're getting fed that this is all there is. If you don't do this, you're not playing. And it's just
Right.
like, well, I disagree.
Keep that up. Yeah,
You
keep that
know?
up, Brian.
So yeah, if you haven't seen Summer of Soul, uh
This is the group that put me out fifth
incredible.
dimension because it was so different, and I don't want
Mhm.
to say it wasn't as aggressively soulful as the other groups, right?
Well, there's a lot of man,
They had
those
a lot, yeah,
To hear them talk about that. There's some
right,
really good interviews with Marilyn McCoo, Billy Davis Jr. talking
right.
about, actually, people didn't even know they were black.
That's the
Like, I
thing, right?
there's a lot of uh but they were like so honored to be a part of that. Like,
Right,
man, they
right,
embrace us.
right,
They do embrace us. So
right.
just, man, going back to that concert that I am on my gig of when we were at Washington Park or wherever we were, it
Yep,
was like, uh-oh, what are we it's like, no, we're gonna do what we do
yeah,
and let the chips. I mean,
yep,
you have to do what you do. Pat opening up for Steely Dan. How do I handle? It's like, oh, we're just gonna go. We're gonna kick ass, and we're gonna go home. That's what we're gonna do.
right.
You know.
Look at that
So
right there.
what? Sigwell. First thing I heard Chris play was on an Ozzy song, and that's true. That's a true story.
Wow,
That's a true story, man. My first garage band. That's all we played was metal.
wow,
80s metal, man. 80s metal.
wow,
Yep. And I'm still friends with all of those guys to this day.
wow.
Guitar player Adam Beckvar, we're still very good friends, man.
Who bit off the head of the the root,
That would
the
be
pigeon or something.
that was the
The
singer Mitch Bershon. Who I'm still friends with all these guys, man. We're still Facebook. We chat, man, all the time.
What's the little Easter marshmallow thing that people eat? It was like
Oh, the peeps. Oh,
peep. Yeah, maybe it was a peep, man. He
man,
grabbed
those
a
are
peep.
brutal, man. That's the worst. That's like Francisco Laura's fruit,
Oh my goodness.
dude.
I
Who
thought that
comes to a jam session with a bag full of fruit, man,
he wants to share,
that
man.
nobody's ever heard of?
He wants to share, bro.
Like, what? Like,
He was excited, bro. Man, people are excited about sharing things, bro. We need more of that.
your boy,
People to be
your boy,
excited.
Nathaniel was tearing them things up, man.
Yeah, he said I had some before. I was like, oh wow, okay.
What was the thing called? I can't remember what
Shoot. Didn't it start with a P?
something like I can't remember, man. But it tasted like at first it tasted a little bit like a creamsicle, so it gets you. But then on the back end, it's got that bear aspirin. You remember those little orange that bear that chill the chill. You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Little orange children's
Chew-
aspirin,
chew-
man.
chewable thing, yeah,
It's
joint,
real
yeah.
chalk. It's got that kind of like
Oh man,
aftertaste. I was like, nah, dude, I'm good.
little Flintstone vitamin.
No, not even Flintstones were kind of good, man.
Look at John.
John was like, he did, man. He was like, nah, man, I'm good.
Hey, John lived through the 70s. You know, you just can't just try anything
Like,
cats
no,
give you. You know what I'm
man.
saying?
It was like, nah, dude. He brings a bag of fruit to this. That was crazy.
Yeah,
man.
it's like, hey, man. I think I need to go to the jam session and bring this fruit up.
He's like, I bought treats. That's what he's saying. He's like, I brought treats.
I want to say
like,
something so bad, but I can't.
I'm
But
like,
yeah.
what? What are you talking about, man? It's like, man, you always got something going on, man. You know, just come in and play bass. Just come in and play, man. It
He was
just
excited, man. I gotta give people props for excitement, bro, and energy, man, for like wanting to share. We should all be wanting to do that, you know?
all right. I'll leave it. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Great show. We love the questions. That's really what we're after.
More questions now than before. You know, that was great.
Definitely. So, come check us out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't on YouTube. But we did get a few new subscribers tonight, so that's cool. And what's so funny, man? Yeah, well.
You didn't even try it.
Well.
Oh man.
He looked at that. He was like, I'm good. No.
It's good to see John coming out too, man, playing, man. That's it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I haven't got a chance to play with John. I think maybe last time I played with him time, maybe 2 weeks ago.
I've been messing with him. Lamatina, I've been calling him the Godfather. The Godfather comes out, man. Godfather, man. It's the Godfather. So anyway, thank you guys, everybody, for your questions, being in the chat. Big thanks to Pat Bianchi for coming in and hanging out with us. And come out to the show, man. Hang out at Napoleon's if you're in the area. Yeah. I guarantee you, if you haven't checked out a real organ, you will be a fan. It is it's a sound that's for everybody. I will say that, man.
And I tell you this, I'm being modest, but I'm bringing the heat Thursday too.
Okay.
So I'm bringing it.
I believe it. You always bring the heat. Why would you say that? You don't need to say that.
Yeah, I'm bringing the heat. All right.
You don't have to.
Exactly.
But that's another thing, right? Like,
yeah,
man, that's so inspired, man. It's like, man,
yeah, can't. I'm not one of those cats, bro.
I mean,
not one of those cats.
I mean, Apollo Creed, when he saw Clubber Lang, he was trying to, he didn't want none of that, though.
No,
he didn't want none of that.
No. He stood back after that. He was like,
he didn't want none of that. Hey boy. What do you say? Call you? Hey boy.
Wait, what did Creed tell Rocky? Finish this bum and let's get out of here. Something like you said.
He said, drop this chump and let's get out of here, man. He said, you want to jump? Jump, Creed. Jump.
Creed. Come on, Creed.
Legendary.
Quick story. Did you know that Rocky, Sylvester Stallone originally got Ernie Shavers to play Clubber Lang?
I do know that, yes.
And they were just going through the shadow box and he said, man, really, he kind of hit me.
No, boy. Man. Sly was like, I'm good.
Right. Anyway, that's a good note to end on right here.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys. And hopefully we will see you out Thursday and or in Nashville. And we will be back next week with a recap of the show and other things. So
yes.
Thank you. And we will see you guys soon. Peace.